Hey folks, Coach Glenn here. Happy Friday to everybody. So happy to get a chance to talk to you again. Today we're going to talk about how eating low carb is easier than you think. And I'm going to share with you a day of my eating schedule. And you know what? Yes, I'm not perfect. There's lots of times that I stray from the path, but I can tell you that consistently I am probably 90% or 95% eating clean and organic, and I am walking the talk. So a lot of people have asked me over the last few weeks, well, hey, can you give me some examples of ways I can eat low carb without it being boring, or maybe it won't taste good? So I'm going to share with you what I had yesterday. And I'm going to put everything in. I'm not going to leave anything out. All right. So my first meal of the day around 11 a.m. I had 1 tablespoon of ghee, which is clarified butter, 4 scrambled eggs. And after I was done that, I had 1 square of 90% dark chocolate, because I want to make sure that my first meal of the day doesn't have any carbs at all, or very, very few. And I want to make sure it's very protein heavy. Very important to have that first meal of the day be very protein heavy. My second meal was around, I don't call it breakfast. I know it's breaking the fast, but it's my first meal of the day. My second meal of the day was at 2 o'clock, 3 hours later. It was a whey protein shake. I had 1 cup of coconut milk, 35 grams of whey protein, 5 grams of collagen protein. I had a full avocado in there, and I had some greens. Now you might think, well, I don't really want to be drinking a shake to get my protein. Well, part of the reason why I drink a whey protein shake every day is, 1, it tastes delicious. And 2, sometimes I just get tired of cooking another meal and having to sit down and eat another meal. And yesterday I was busy. I was in front of the computer all day. I was on calls, and it was just easier for me to make a quick shake and drink it while I work. So convenience and taste. All right. So, and then didn't eat again till around 7:30. So that was a big break, because I had meetings. I was on the phone. Plus I had a weight training session. So let me back up. I had a snack around 5:30-ish, maybe 6. I had a half chicken breast. I had a good fats bar, which is mostly healthy fats, a little bit of protein, and some ketones. So if you're wondering, well, what are ketones? Ketones, it's a new technology that you put in water. It's powder. You drink it up, and it gives your body the same ketones that your liver produces when you are when you're on a keto diet, or if you fasted for 3 or 4 days and your liver starts producing ketones. It's just an easier way, because I'm not a big fan of fasting for 3 or 4 days to give my body the benefits of ketones. All right. Last meal of the day was around 8. I had 50 grams of ground turkey, 2 heaping handfuls of romaine lettuce, maybe 3, 2 tablespoons, maybe 3 of olive oil on that, and then a half or a small piece of a baked potato. And then after that, because I still felt hungry, and I tend to eat my carbs later in the day, specifically evening. I think after that, because I was still hungry, I think I had 2 more squares of 90% dark chocolate, maybe 1 square of 70% dark chocolate, and then I had a tablespoon of honey. And that is all I ate yesterday. So I don't have an exact calorie count for you. I know it's pretty low carb. For me, I don't feel hungry on that. I don't have sugar cravings. For me, that's simple. It's sustainable. I find for me and for my health goals, it's very easy for me to eat this way. Yes, I could probably figure out a way to get a few more veggies in there. Yes, I eat fruit, but not every day, probably 2 or 3 times a week. And that's how I like to maintain feeling strong, having brain clarity, not having brain fog from eating too many carbs. Um, for me, I find when I eat a lot of starch or eat a lot of carbs, I just have excess inflammation. I do end up craving them. It's almost like, that old commercial. I bet you can't eat just one chip. Carbs for me are like chips. Well, they are. And so it's very hard to have just one little carrot or one little cucumber or one mouthful of rice. Like, you're going to want more, because even though vegetables and fruit are healthy for you, it still breaks down into simple sugar in your body, and your body is very addicted to sugar. And so for me, I've just found that that's how I like it. I do well on 80 to 100 grams a day of carbs. Sometimes less, sometimes a little more, but I know that for me, that's my sweet spot. So I'm not quite keto, because that's like 30 or 40 or 50 grams a day. I did that strict for 6 months years ago, and it just wasn't for me. I would say I'm probably more paleo, but I probably have a little bit more protein than what the paleo guidelines suggest. So I guess, I'm kind of doing my own thing, maybe closer to carnivore, I guess. But that is what works for me. And you've got to figure out what works for you. So I'm just giving you an example of a day in my eating life. And it's not difficult. Like I said earlier, I don't get sugar cravings. I do try and save a lot of my carbs for, late afternoon, early evening. I try not to eat past 8 o'clock. My eating window is usually 11 to 9, which is a 9-hour eating window. So I've got 15 hours where I'm not eating, or I'm intermittent fasting. And I have found that has worked for me over the years. But one thing I did change, folks, is years ago, my first meal of the day to break the fast was very tiny. And I found that that's when I had a lot of my cravings, through the afternoon and evening, is I wasn't eating enough of high quality protein in the morning. And that's what really helped me changing it probably about 3 months ago to eating a lot more protein, having a lot more calories that first meal to break that fast. And it's really, really helped me get over that hump of, having cravings later in the day, or feeling hungry and, feeling that I need to eat all the time. So again, you've got to figure out what works for you. And hopefully that helped you, and it gave you some idea of that low carb is doable. Do I miss eating a ton of starch? Yeah. But I don't need it. If I was far more active, like when I was in my teens and 20s, then yeah, I could probably eat more starch. Like last night I had, like I said, half a baked potato. Typically I don't do that. I might have starch once or twice a week, really only on days that I'm really physically active or feel like I've had a really demanding workout. But on days where I'm pretty much just sitting in my ass in front of a screen working, and I'm just not, I'm not throwing weights around, I'm not moving as much, then, I don't need the starch, and nor do you. So if you are someone that needs to figure out a logical way to stop or reduce the amount of starch that you're getting. And when I say starch, for those of you that are not aware, it's like your complex carbs. So it would be like rice, bread, potatoes, cereals, grains, pasta, all those things. Typically, what I will say is use your starch as a reward for accomplishing something where, like for me, I had a really tough workout yesterday, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to eat half a baked potato. At the end of the day, does it really matter? It's like 30 grams of extra carbs. Today, I'm going to move as well. So, it's not like it's going to stick with me. But for the most part, I grew up, and my first meal of the day before I went to school was a bowl of cereal. I didn't really think anything of it. I was a kid. My metabolism was much higher. I was starving by lunchtime, because that really isn't enough to sustain you, not enough protein for sure. And now I find that when I shifted what I eat first thing, like breaking that fast, when it is very protein heavy, I'm fine the rest of the day. I don't feel the need that I need the starch. And so I don't want to say you got to earn the reward of eating starch by being active and moving. But if you're not as active as you were as a kid or in your early 20s, your body doesn't need the extra starch. Use that starch as a reward for, you know what, I went for a long walk today, or I had a hard strength workout today, or, I went for a hike in the mountains, or I went for a long bike ride. Use it as a reward. You probably still don't need it to replenish all the glycogen stores in your muscle tissue if you went for a walk, but that's typically how I justify it. Some days, if I'm not very active, obviously I'll eat even less carbs and less veggies, because your body, basically, folks, carbohydrates is your body's simplest form of fuel. And so if you're not going to be using the fuel, then you really can survive off proteins and fats. I mean, how do you think the Eskimos in the north did it for hundreds of years and still do it? They have very little access to carbs other than the processed crap that we've introduced them to. So you don't need carbs if you're not moving and you're not physically active. And that is, I think, something that people need to wrap their heads around. It's something that it took me a long time to dive into the research, going to nutrition seminars and keto seminars and trying to figure out, or health conferences, and hearing from people that have been studying nutrition and fat and carbs for years before the light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, okay, wow, I've been eating carbs just because everyone eats carbs, but there was no real logical reason. So once I figured out that my body, like my DNA and my body and how I feel and how my brain functions and my mood swings, once I figured out that my body functioned better on more protein and more healthy fat, I didn't miss the carbs. And so you may have to go through some trial and error yourself and figure out, what is it where I can function optimally and I don't crave sugar or crave carbs? You got to figure out that sweet spot for you. So I'm just giving you an example of a day in my life, but obviously all of you you're going to be different than me, and what your requirements are going to be very different from mine. So that's it. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. I will talk to you again next Friday, where I'll be sharing more health tips, primarily on nutrition, supplements, lifestyle, something to help you out in your day. Because again, we've all got challenges, we've all got struggles, but for the most part, well, not for the most part, everybody eats. And so it's important that if you are eating, that you're putting the right fuel in your mouth, because 80% of how you look and feel depends on the nutrition and the food that you put in your mouth and the food and drink you put in your mouth. So thank you for watching, folks. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next Friday at noon. So every Friday at noon Mountain Time, I'm going to be doing a live. So if you're available, join me. If you remember, put it in your phone. If you find this information useful, please share it with a friend. That's it. Have a great rest of your day, folks. Take care.